Hey, what's up, folks? We have a special show for you today. Candace Owens joins us live to talk about how she's feeling about the 2024 election, Trump, DeSantis, why she said a few times she'd like to see Thomas Massie as president or vice president under her, what she's been up to, her documentaries, and a few other special topics. It should be a great chat, folks. Thanks so much for joining today. Welcome to the Dream Rare Podcast. The show starts now. It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from our... What's going on, everybody? Today I'm live with a special guest, Candace Owens. Thanks for joining, Candace.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I just want to let people know, I don't know who's wondering, but, I've been on Candace's show. She's on here. There's no restrictions. She's never once asked me to say stuff. Because I know when I was on Daily Wire, they were like, did they say you couldn't say anything? I was like, nope, Candace is pretty straightforward, pretty fair game.
Yeah, definitely no restrictions. I feel like when you're a public figure, you need to just go into it and realize people have questions. And it gets really inauthentic if you're like, don't ask me about this,
Right. And Candace can confirm this. I hit her up last week to do the interview and all the Crowder stuff. She's free to mention it, but that wasn't my intention to do it back-to-back days. I had hit her up last week, and then she had said she could do it. So you could watch her channel for her take on it. I did a take on it, but that wasn't my intention to just piggyback it because I have a lot of things I want to ask Candace about.
Yeah, you're totally fine. It's weird. It always works out that way, that I have always some media slated when suddenly there's some big news. Like that was what happened with Tim Pool. Everyone thought it was like a setup. Tim Pool hit me up back in like November to go on his show in January. And then it ended up being like the night before all the Crowder stuff exploded, but there was no conspiracy. Just sometimes you have media books and stuff happens.
Right. I didn't know that. That was interesting timing. But I guess you getting a lot of beef. So, there's a chance that if it's on like an odd day that it might be lining up with someone.
Yeah, it's true.
First thing I want to ask you about is I saw you say, I don't know if it was last year or sometime in the last 2 years, that if you ran for president, you would consider Thomas Massie to be your vice president. And then you also responded to me on Twitter and said Thomas Massie should be president one day. I've liked him since I saw him stand up against the Communist CARES Act and all the lockdown stuff. What makes you think that? And is he like the front runner in your mind still, if you ever did run?
If we actually had people that looked at the qualifications and actually examined every single vote and the way in which every single congressman voted, Thomas Massie would be the front runner. There's no questions asked. I was positively blown away by him when I had him on my show, and we really got into it, and I realized he's an absolutely brilliant man. He basically lives off of his land, and he does not capitulate to the left or the right. I mean, he goes against his party when he votes sometimes. He is a principled voter, meaning like one example is he does not believe in sending a single dollar overseas when we have issues in America. And there you will see that even in the GOP, like certain countries are like, no, we should send money here. We should send money here. He's like, nope. No money going overseas at all. It's not personal. It's just my personal perspective. And I just think that if I ran for president, I would run with Thomas Massie, or I would be his VP. I would be his press secretary, wherever he could have me in his administration, even I would be game for it. He really is a wonderful guy.
It says a lot about you too, because I think Massie, not only with the voting, he's like you said, he lives off the farm. He's like all about raw milk. He always talks about food. But a lot of high-profile people in the GOP are just in Republican culture. I think the supporters like him and the voters have really come to respect him. But a lot of more high-profile people, they kind of just act like he doesn't exist because he's not that famous. So I think with your platform, for you to say stuff like that, I mean, that to me, that would put you ahead of a lot of people if you ever ran, because I think he's a real deal outsider, real deal like small government guy.
I told him, I said, anytime you want to run, pick me. If you don't run, or if I run, please promise me that you'll run with me. If you don't know about Thomas Massie, you should look into him. And I'm ashamed to say I didn't know that much about him really until 2 years ago. And I had him on my show, and I was just completely blown away. And I think you're right. I think a lot of it plays into fame. Whenever people are thinking about presidential contenders, they're always thinking about people that are super famous and not thinking about people that are super principled. And I think that that's probably an American flaw.
Right. Well, yeah, I look at some politics where there's some worse things about America, and then I look at Canada and I watch that debate and I'm like, dude, the right winger is a left winger. And then sometimes people comment on my Twitter and they're like soft, and they're like, I'm from Canada anyway, I can't vote. I'm like, thank God, leave that softness over there. We don't need that in our world.
Yeah, we have enough softness. Definitely do not need to extradite any softness from overseas.
When Thomas Massie came out against the CARES Act, I think the big thing that he was saying that he was worried about was people weren't able to vote in person, or they said they couldn't. And Thomas Massie was like, this is the most expensive bill we've ever passed of this kind, and people don't even want to come in to vote. And, Trump had tweeted that he's a second or third rate Republican. I can't remember what rate, and that, Massie should be kicked out of the GOP. And Thomas has always had
That's wild.
Yeah, he always had a good attitude about it, but that is wild. I was going to ask what you thought about that.
Yeah, that's absolutely wild. The idea that Thomas Massie should be kicked out of the GOP is just something that should never be uttered by a single person who claims to be conservative. And now it's obviously Trump. He likes to do hot takes, and if he feels insulted, he kind of punches without even paying attention to who he's possibly punching. But that is a wild take. It is a garbage take. It should not be accepted by any conservative who follows Thomas Massie. He's wonderful.
On that note, I wanted to ask, because I thought, to your credit, you were probably one of, or the only person on the right that I've seen give a decent interview to Trump where you asked him about Julian Assange, which was a great question that I don't think anyone asked him until that point. And you also asked him about the vaccine. I'm just going to read a few quotes from it. And then also, I saw your YouTube video about how he was a little upset at you kind of trying to defend him after it. I thought you were coming to his defense, and maybe he got a little upset.
I was.
Right. So I'm going to read these quotes, and then just you could tell me if you want about what happened there. So he said it was one of the greatest achievements of mankind. And then it said, look, the results of the vaccine are very good. And if you get it, it's a very minor form. People aren't dying when they take the vaccine. So that put you kind of in a pickle where then the media was covering it. You kind of came to his defense. And then I think you said on YouTube, he got a little upset possibly. Just you tell the story, not me.
Yeah, well, to be honest, it was really immature on Trump's part. First and foremost, I gave him a very fair interview. I asked questions that I felt really reflected the concerns of the voters at that time. Obviously, we were coming out of COVID. A lot of things were really crazy, forcing vaccines upon people. People that follow me in my show know that I don't vax my children at all. I very much cover the big pharma scam. People think it began with the COVID vaccine. It began before, but not to get deep into that. But this was obviously something that I really want to talk to him about because he kept pushing this vaccine. I do want to say, to be fair to him, this is the person who was a leader of the free world. All of the experts he was surrounding himself with, who he's supposed to surround himself with, people that are smarter than him, right, when making up these sorts of decisions, were telling him that this is going to essentially be a plague. The bubonic plague was coming. And when you are given that little bit of knowledge, of course, you want to trust the experts. You want to believe with him. So I don't want to be the person that's like, well, it's just so easy to make a decision and to say absolutely not. I do believe that if I was president of the United States, I still would have never shut down the government. I was very much against him in doing that, because then if you ever have a Democrat president, they're going to say, and they want to shut down the government arbitrarily, they're going to say the Republicans did first. It is always the right of the individual to be able to decide whether or not they want to get up and risk their lives to go to work. That's just, if you're going to die from a plague, you have a right to go out and sell coffee if you think making money for your family is bigger. So I asked him that question, meaningfully, and he kind of just went into an ad for how great he was, right? And I got this out and it was the fastest. And I think in his mindset, he was very much in campaign mode, which is he does this a lot of times. He lists his accomplishments and he wasn't hearing me, and he was instead focused on listing his accomplishments. And obviously the media, which was so pro big pharma, loved this. They seized upon it and they published all of these articles about how even Jen Psaki tweeted what he said in my interview and was like, yep, great, go get your vaccine. And so he got blowback from his own supporters, who were still feeling, as I was trying to express to him, that this is actually wrong. We didn't know anything about this vaccine. It was completely rushed. And it would have been a great time for him to reflect and say, really what I just said in his defense is we only knew what we knew at the time. You know what I mean? And so when he got this blowback, there was a lot of conspiracy underneath it where people were saying that Trump sold out to big pharma, he was accepting checks from, suddenly they had transformed him into Dr. Fauci's partner. And my instinct was, which is always just to tell people my gut instincts about how I read the situation, was that wasn't the case, that he was just rattling off his accomplishments and he needed to be like, I'm Donald Trump, I do it all. I got this done and it's amazing. Not that he was trying to be a big pharma shill. And so in trying to defend him, I said, guys, first and foremost, understand his age. If you speak to people that are above the age of 60, they love vaccines. They really do. It is just a thing. Trump actually is over 60. And he then took this really vain point of me, like the media ran it as Candace says, he's old and out of touch, which is not what I said, but he didn't watch it. He's reading the media, as opposed to listening to what I said, which was really me trying to defend him. And he got upset about it. And he was saying bad things about me to people at Mar-a-Lago, telling them how mad he was at me. And he was mad at me because of what he said. And so I thought that was really crap. I thought it was incredibly immature, especially because I had been such a staunch supporter of his. And I was even trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, which still is my honest take. I don't think he was shilling for Big Pharma. But yeah, so that was kind of a disaster situation.
Is he still upset at you, you think, or?
I'm sure he's moved on. I mean, if he picks me as an enemy, that would be a little bit ridiculous. I'm sure he's moved on from it by now. But I didn't like it. I thought that it was just poor character, and he should have just said it's totally fine and actually really cool for people to admit that they don't always get things right, or that they missed something, or that they're listening to other people and their feedback. I try to do it all the time. We can't know everything in every single moment. And I think that he struggles to do that. But I try to be understanding in that struggle, because he's also had to deal with just a complete onslaught of attacks from the very moment that he announced that he was running. And so I think he finds everyone to be suspicious and kind of has become a bit paranoid, even about his own friends.
Yeah, I took it as, I know your positions on vaccines, and you've been one of the most consistent people. You talked about it in 2019. Me and you were one of the only ones talking about mandatory vaccines in 2019. You could find tweets from me and Candace warning America that they were coming with mandatory vaccines before the lockdown. So you're in a pickle. That's how I took it, where it's like Trump's saying these things that like pretty much no one agrees with in his base. The media's coming out, and I took it as you did, that you were kind of defending him and giving him every benefit of the doubt, to be like, listen, trying to basically twist it to be like, Trump just isn't right about this, but I still like him, but he's not corrupt. And then he got mad.
Right.
But I thought that was you in a tough spot, but you could have went way harder on him, and you kind of reached out and tried to help him, I thought. So that was kind of weird. I think. And
then he slapped my hand, and I was like, okay, whatever. Love your vaccine. Love it forever. Go to bed with your vaccines. I don't care. I'm out,
Right. He's still, and that's my thing where, I'm the same as you, where I understand things are tough. I understand some people want it, but still in 2023, I saw him, I don't know if it was Newsmax or one of those One America News types, and he's still saying like it saved 100 million lives. And I'm like, I guess this is just something he doesn't want to switch on. Do you think some people are like afraid to disagree with him, or even, because you did a fair interview, your Julian Assange question was great. I think even progressives appreciated it, who want Julian Assange out of prison. They're trying to kill him essentially. Yeah. Do you think that like people are afraid on the right to like ask him tough questions?
I do. I think what happens is that they feel like they have to, because you feel like you have to defend him because you know that he is receiving so many unfair attacks. But I think somewhere along the line, people trip into not realizing that you can actually just be a sane voice. You know what I mean? You can completely defend him when he's right, but you shouldn't be afraid of saying, I don't agree with him, right? But we should feel free to disagree with people that we're even friends with. I mean, I am sure if we go back and we talk about everything that you and I believe in, we're going to come across a disagreement, right? That's just the way it is. But people feel like if you do that, it's a sort of betrayal. And it was really weird when I recounted exactly what happened to me in this Trump interview and exactly as he reacted. And I had people sending me like angry tweets being like, how dare you speak against Donald Trump? And I'm like, guys, I'm just telling you what actually happened. Like, you really need to check yourself for a second if your mentality is that you can't have a disagreement with somebody, or you can't disagree with a certain policy that they put into place. In fact, I would almost argue that if you agree with anybody 110% of the time, that you're probably like, not someone people should be listening to. If you're just out there like, never has this person done a single thing wrong, like they're perfectly perfect, that's just impossible. You know what I mean? It's just actually impossible. So yeah, I think it's crappy, but you do get people that are just kind of like a little sycophantic.
That's a perfect segue for my next question, because I like right-wingers challenging each other. I think it's important. But in the last month or two, I feel like it's gotten pretty ugly because of the Trump and DeSantis. Almost definitely DeSantis is going to run. Trump is now basically competing against him, a lot of supporters, they're calling themselves DeSantis or cultists, and it's getting definitely wild. And, people are saying,
I like establishment. There's so many different names that they've got out there.
At first, I didn't like Meatball Ron, but the more I think about it, it is kind of funny. But I'm Italian. I like meatballs, and it's just like, my head starts kind of thinking about chicken parm and stuff. But on that note, I wanted to ask you I think you mentioned where loyalty and just being authentic crosses the line. But what do you think about Trump versus DeSantis from your opinion? Like, do you like them both? Are you waiting? Are you endorsing anyone? What do you think?
Yeah, I've been super honest about this on my show. So one of the things that I want to say for off the bat is I'm a gut player. My gut has served me in my life. People say, oh, you just trust your gut. It's like, yeah, I actually do trust my gut about certain things. There's something about Ron DeSantis that my gut just says no. And I said that immediately on my show. I said there's something about him that I don't really feel like he's in control. The wrong people are supporting him, I guess, also is the people that are hardcore about DeSantis, the people that I trust the least to give me a fair assessment of who I should vote for. And so I do not like that DeSantis is even being quite, I guess the right word, it's a bit dishonest what he's doing right now. I said this on my show. I think it's actually premiering right now, where he's on this world tour. He's spent more days in April out of Florida than within it. And he's gaslighting us, saying that he's just doing normal governor things, right? He's been to 7 other states that he's been visiting. He says he's on a book tour. Now he's overseas, says that he's working on foreign policy stuff, that's going to bring money into Florida, as if we don't have cell phones. You can just schedule a call with someone, and you know what I mean? And you have to take your wife. Oh, by the way, in order to get business deals done, you have to take your wife and your children. It's gaslighting now, right? And I get, first and foremost, to be fair to DeSantis, that there are FEC implications that take place obviously when you announce that you're running, but it's when he gets asked the question, he's like, oh, well, I'm not running. So I don't like it. It's gone a little bit too far. And I don't like this Jackie O JFK tour that they're on. She's literally dressing like Jackie O. And then they're like, no, you guys are crazy for saying that we're running. So that kind of feeds into my already gut instinct that there's something with DeSantis that just feels a little tricky. Speaking of voting records that you can look at, I don't know that I trust DeSantis to be America first. And again, I am totally saying all of this as my personal opinion. I'm not telling you guys that you must not support Ron DeSantis, but I don't think he's America first whatsoever. And yeah, that's my perspective on him. And with DeSantis, he says stuff, and I don't know if he's telling us the truth. With Trump, I know he's actually saying what he thinks. And so I implicitly trust Trump more than I trust DeSantis. So I think that's kind of what I would say.
Is your vote swayable at this point, or are you pretty set on it? What would it take to?
I wouldn't vote for Ron DeSantis. But I do want to say I think he's a fantastic governor in Florida. I think he's done a tremendous job in Florida. And if I was in Florida, I would vote for DeSantis 100 times if I was a Democrat and I had mail-in ballots.
I'm gonna say my perspective. I want to hear your opinion on it, because like you said with DeSantis, I see what he's doing. I don't trust any politician at this point, and I'm skeptical. My concern recently has been that Trump has so much, I don't even know if I'd call it loyalty, but so much trust where, I saw with the inauguration, I didn't realize this during it because I was defending Trump so much against the left-wing attacks, they're going crazy. He's doing a great job. He was crushing. But I found out he took over $100 million from corporations, $1 million from Pfizer, hired a bunch of lobbyists, hired Mitch McConnell's wife. I'm not going to say and blame him for that, but with Trump, no one wants to say that. But with DeSantis, people do. So I'm like, if Trump does win the nominee, which it looks like it's very likely, nobody wants to really call it out. But with DeSantis, everybody will call out the donor money. But if the other, so that's what kind of concerns me, because like you said, then it comes across as unloyal or hating. But I saw he took Alex Azar, a pharmacy lobbyist for HHS, Scott Gottlieb at FDA. I know RFK Jr. talks a lot about this. And DeSantis, although I don't trust him, he picked Joseph Ladapo, who's a frontline doctor, to be the Surgeon General. So for me, I'm trying to get them to compete without just ripping each other's heads off, which unfortunately
that's actually happening. Really interesting. And he definitely did there's a lot of things that Trump got wrong, and people constantly want to put the blame on other people, just in terms of the way that he was building his cabinet. I mean, he put the snakes in his own garden, you know what I'm saying? Right. And people don't like to say that. They're like, oh no, he was just always a victim. He never knew what was going on. And maybe this person was controlling him. It's like, he was president of the United States, so I don't want to hear that this person was in his ear, or he had a little finger in his ear telling him what to do, which is kind of one perception perception that people have. And that's the stuff where I'm like, okay, Trump supporters, we do need to get real. You need to be able to actually critique him. DeSantis, I have a bad gut instinct about, but you're correct. A lot of people take money and from a lot of different people. By the way, I don't know when he took that money from Pfizer. Was that pre-COVID or post-COVID?
It was for the inauguration. So
yeah, but like that's my point. He likes vaccines, so that's not even a weird bit of money for him to take.
Well, RFK,
he believes.
This is from RFK Jr. He said that Trump actually called him up before the election and wanted to really expose some stuff. But then RFK says after he took $1 million donation from Pfizer that he hired a pharmacy lobbyist and kind of closed the door. So it seems like Trump is kind of aware and maybe made a business decision. But my whole thing is just the energy of like, are we going to demand? Like, I would love if Trump hired you. I would love if Trump hired Thomas Massie. I would love if Trump put RFK Jr. in charge of Big Pharma. So I'm wondering, is that the route he's going to go? Is he going to put people that we like into power, or is he
that we trust around him? Yeah,
right.
I totally agree with that, because I do think he is influenced by the people that are around him, and I don't know like who is around him that we're supposed to trust, I guess, and that's a question. I don't mean that as condemnation, but who is it around Trump that we're like, yeah, that's a really good, trustworthy person that's around him, and I definitely like feel that we can go forward with everything that this person is saying. So
that's just what I hope, because it's like, obviously I think he's good on foreign policy, but even like with the thing with you, you know, I don't mind if people make mistakes. I don't mind if they're wrong. I think when Tucker Carlson said, I was a part of the problem my whole life, I was the media, like that made me trust Tucker so much more, that he was able to look at himself and be like, he's such a nice guy, right? And such like a authentic to be like, I supported the Iraq war. I can't live with myself. Like, you're like, wow, this guy is able to acknowledge that.
You don't get it right the whole time. And that's why I say what's so weird about some Trump supporters, that it's like, he never got it wrong. Like, I'm like, what are you delusional? Like, we've all gotten it wrong. You know what I'm saying? But the inability to admit that you've got it wrong, to me, is super alarming. You know, to not be able to say, I got it wrong, and here's why I got it wrong, and here's what I've learned from that experience. I think it's super alarming. Like, you have to exercise humility. I mean, listen, my entire career is based on having gotten it wrong. I used to be liberal. You know, I mean, I never voted for a Democrat, so I guess I'll be able to say I was Republican my whole life, but still, I thought liberal, and I did think that Republicans were racist and backwards. And I talk about that in my book, where I talk about how one of the hardest things to do is to look yourself in the mirror and say, I was completely wrong about this, you know? And most people don't have that humility within them. And we need people that do have that humility to be able to say that I got something wrong.
And I hope whoever wins the nominee, especially if it's Trump, but anyone really, I just know people will do it with other people like McCarthy, even DeSantis. I like that they're calling out the donors. It's just, we got to call it both ways. And if Trump gets in, I hope that his base challenges him to pick good people for the cabinet, because HHS, FDA, Secretary of State, that's going to make or break it. And I can't take too many more True Socials him complaining about Bill Barr. It's like, hire somebody better next time. But, you know.
And I don't want, the other thing that doesn't feel good is he's like running on vengeance. And that's why I had Vivek Ramaswamy on my show. Great conversation. Like, I walked away feeling inspired and like light after the conversation, because he didn't have anything to rehash. You know what I'm saying? He was like totally just fresh energy. Here's what we're going to do. And I really realized in that moment, like, that Trump is kind of running to kind of avenge himself, which makes sense. He was horribly wrong. Like, I'm not trying to say that he wasn't actually horribly wronged, but it is nice to hear a vision about the future. And I felt that way. Like, we were stuck in mud when I was interviewing him, and I kept trying to get him to talk about like COVID and what was going on in that circumstance, but he kept trying to bring me back to the election and talking about, you know, what went on. I'm like, okay, but there's a lot of other things that we're concerned about now. I know that you want to right these wrongs, but also the world is crazy. We've just had lockdowns. We've just been told that we have to vax our children or they can't go back to school. We need to hear you on these present issues as well.
Right. And I think, you know, whether people like Trump or DeSantis more, no one cared about DeSantis before Trump kind of just kept rehashing old stuff and not talking about what was going on. And DeSantis spent a year talking about what's going on. So that's, to me, that's where DeSantis.
He's a great governor.
And he was just he was on the precipice of reality, where like 2018 Trump, I'd wake up, he'd have 7 tweets, and I didn't even need to say anything because he said everything perfectly. Where, you know, I think that is a campaign flaw, to talk about the old stuff, but also live in the present, because I think that
he needs to be more present now. Yeah, for sure.
I want to ask about Ye, the artist formerly known, or the human formerly known as Kanye West. I say Ye, sometimes people don't know, but I'm being
the
respectful.
Human formerly known as Kanye West.
Yeah, the icon, the designer, the, you know, artist. But you know, what's your relationship with Ye? And you know, I thought years ago. Now it's been so many different transformations, new albums and stuff. I thought that was so cool when he first gave you a shout out. And do you remember what he said, what he tweeted?
I will never forget what he tweeted. I will never forget what he tweeted. It's like etched into my heart. I actually cried when he tweeted it. It's like, it'll be a memory I have when I'm on my deathbed. You know, I love the way Candace Owens thinks. And I thought it was a prank because Nigel Farage, right-hand man, I had strangely had lunch with him like a month earlier. Not strangely, meaning like it was the first time meeting Nigel Farage. And I was talking to him about how much I love Kanye West. And then a couple of weeks later, he sends me this tweet that says, I love the way Candace Owens thinks. And I was like, is this British humor? Like, is he trying to be funny? Did he doctor this tweet to be funny? And then my hands were shaking and I went to Twitter to see if it was real. And I saw that it was real. And I just started crying, like legit. Could not believe it that it was real. Could not believe it because he just meant so much to me growing up. And it's like, even thinking about it still makes me want to cry because it's just, I don't think people really understand, like when you don't, come from circumstances where you have a lot of opportunities or have a lot of connections and you're able to put a song on and it makes you feel like you can be something. Like Kanye really the mold in telling you sort of like, F this person, you are you're your own superhero. That's kind of been the message of his music. It's like, I'm the greatest because I say I'm the greatest. And people a lot of times just say, okay, this is just arrogance. It doesn't mean anything. But you need that little bit of arrogance to get you through the day when you don't have connections. Why would you believe in yourself? You come from circumstances where everything's a zero. So you need a Kanye track. And so for me, taking a chance on myself, jumping into politics, starting my YouTube channel, I was listening to Kanye's music nonstop. And then this man tweets me and says, I love the way Candace Owens thinks. And it was just a moment. It really was.
And then from there, I know there was, I don't know, the Blexit, you launched Blexit, and then everybody assumed you had a falling out or something. Then you started hanging out with him. I remember the picture of you, Ray J, Ye, Colby Covington at your premiere. That was just the funniest. I was like, yo, that's a good combo. So what's your friendship or relationship like with him as far as like how that has come to be?
One of the things that I've said to people is I don't speak now about my relationship with Kanye publicly because what's really happened is Kanye and I have always had a relationship, but whenever it enters the public domain and people find out about it, we just end up being harassed. Like there's something about the Kanye plus Candace equation that the media cannot deal with. And obviously like Kanye is trying to live a much more privatized life right now. So, I mean, I'm happy to talk about anything publicly that's between me and Kanye, but I try not to speak about our relationship today because it just garners the wrong kind of attention.
For sure. I guess the one thing would be, it's funny because Ye is such a character that there's so many different moments. Like he's lived like 50 different realities in the last 3 years that I have to go through. Like when he wore the red hat, it was a thing. And then it was like when he was on SNL, it was a thing. So there's been so many moments. And I know that, it got dicey last year where, people were publicly calling you anti-Semitic. And I know Prager like rushed to your defense and that like it got a little weird there. Like what was that like where you just started getting blamed because you wouldn't say what people wanted you to say, like when they wanted you to say it?
Yeah, it was I'm not going to lie, it was a really tough situation. One of the things that people don't realize first and foremost is I was postpartum. Like I was like a breastfeeding mother. My show got picked up from 1 day a week to 5 days per week. And then we put on the White Lives Matter shirt. We suddenly had global attention. And then Kanye West sends a tweet. And obviously we know what happened. Like, there was a letter written by Ari, whatever his name is. And he was basically canceled and tweeted by every single person in the world. I mean, it's actually someday in history, we will have to collect how many public figures spoke out against Kanye West, and said that no one should deal with him. He lost Gap. I mean, they took everything from him, even his wife. She tweeted something against him, his ex-sister-in-law, of how unacceptable everything that he did was. And then I think what started to happen is that there is a level that it becomes sadistic when somebody is falling. People really like to watch them and like bleed out, right? They took everything, literally everything. There was nobody left to not to condemn him. And then they said, but what about her? Right? We know that she's friends with him. So even though we've taken everything, even though he's no longer a billionaire, even though we've like stripped him of his dignity and nobody will work with him, and this letter's been written and everybody has condemned him, and even his wife, we need Candace Owens to do it. And that to me felt sadistic. It felt sadistic. And so, yeah, there was an incredible peer pressure campaign to get me to say something awful about him, or, you know, to say maybe not even something awful about him, but to say, I don't agree with what Kanye West said. Kanye West is this, Kanye West is that, to call him anti-Semitic perhaps, or to do that copy and pasted, you know, Dave Chappelle joke where it's like, I stand with the people, which is what which by the way, is all they wanted. They wanted something that was inauthentic, because every single person says the exact sentence. Kim Kardashian says the same sentence as Khloe Kardashian, which means that you want something inauthentic to let you know that you got this person. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because I had this, candidly, I had Dr. Ben Carson on my show, like happened to be in the same time frame. It was one of these God things where he asked me to be on his show, actually, is what it was. And he was talking about, I don't even know what the subject was, but he started talking to me about how in the past, in like slavery, he was talking about slavery and saying that it was really important for masters to sort of separate the slaves, like you're either a house Negro or you're a field Negro, and they kept people warring with each other, and they would, you know, encourage one another to say something like, you know, that Negro's got it wrong, like that Negro shouldn't be acting like that. And it just hit me in the heart when he said it, and I just said that I refused to add on. If I had felt that this was a circumstance where no one had condemned him, right, and it was like, this needs to be said, we're talking about something different. He had nothing left, and I did not have the stomach to do that. And I didn't think people were asking me to do it legitimately, because everyone else in the world had already done it. So I declined to pile on, to step on his head while he was already drowning. And I lost some fans for that. Like, some people were like, I can't believe that you wouldn't say this sentence, or you wouldn't do that. And sometimes people just, you know, but it's okay. It's okay. You can move on. But the claims that I was anti-Semitic based off of something that Kanye said, completely and pointedly ridiculous. And if anybody made that charge against me, I was happy to lose them as a fan.
I think there's the liberal victim card, the LGBT victim card, there's the black victim card, and there's the Jewish victim card. And, you know, I think with like Kyrie and Ye, they were like, yo, don't go there, go there. And to be honest, the condemn thing, I'll speak my opinion, but when someone wants me to condemn, they act like it matters. Like I could pretend like I matter so much, but like I condemn. Did all the racism in the world go away? Oh no, it didn't. Do you know why? Because me saying a sentence doesn't matter. And also me, like, you know, I call it getting Nick Cannons now, where it's like, you know, you show up with a rabbi and you're cured, or you go to a museum and you're cured. It's like
it's inauthentic. Yeah, it's really inauthentic.
My whole mind has changed after an hour tour. Now I've awoken. Like, have you, or is that a PR team? You know,
it's true, and that is why I do want to say there was something so amazing about how Kanye came out and said I got it wrong, because he didn't let the mob make him say something he didn't believe. Instead, he's like, oh, I just watched this 21 Jump Street thing and I realized that you can't judge him. And that's so authentic. That's actually so authentic. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, It's like that. That's actually kind of what makes Kanye so different from everybody else in Hollywood, is that everyone else like would have listened to their agent and been like, just put the stupid copy and pasted sentence up, you know, like, just put it so we can save your billions of dollars. And Ye's like, I'm not doing it. And then like one night he's chilling, he's watching 21 Jump Street, and he's like, I love Jewish people.
And a lot of people
look at this. And people don't realize that that's authenticity. We have become so accustomed to wanting people to be inauthentic that we don't know how to respond to authenticity, you know?
And when he said that, a lot of people that agreed with everything he was saying was like, he caved. And this was just my personal take. I don't know what's going through his head. To me, I always said being a cool person is the best way to be a race advocate. If you're a Jew, be a cool Jew. If you're black, be a cool person. If you're white, be a cool person. So many people, no offense or offense, I don't know, like the ADL, they're just so annoying and cringe, and they have bias, and they think it's going to make people like them. But, you know, Jonathan Greenblatt goes on Breakfast Club, and people, all the comments like don't like him because it's not a, you know, so it's funny, and people
are
like
authentic.
Right, but Jonah Hill, he's legitimately hilarious. I love that movie. So it's funny that he did that, but it's also true. It's like, you know, have you ever watched Adam Sandler and thought, man, I don't like those? You're like, no, he's funny. So being a good person and a cool person is the best way to advocate for your race. You can't just be annoying and expect everyone to like you. Some of the worst race advocates in every race are just annoying, and they think everyone needs to like them. And then they put their entire race as a shield in front of them and say, and then it's like, dude, you're doing such a disservice to your people. Like, just be cool. Be Jonah
That's
Hill
the
in
Dennis
21 Jump
Prager
Street.
mentality. Yeah, that's the Dennis Prager mentality. And that's why, like, I love Dennis Prager and Melissa Strait over at PragerU. I had a really great working experience with them. And Dennis Prager is just so warm and so likable. You don't even think twice about the fact that he's Jewish. He's the best advocate for that because he's just such a wonderful person to be around. And you're right. You're exactly right. The most annoying people that are Black are the ones who are like, I'm Black, so you need to listen to me. I'm Black, like Don Lemon. I'm Black, Vivek, so I'm the one that's allowed to speak. Like, that actually does more harm for race relations. It makes people not like Black people because they're using their color as a shield. And I
Right.
totally agree. And every race has that. Every race has those annoying people that constantly want you to perceive them as a victim, or, and it gets really tiresome. Just be a cool person.
I agree. People probably want to know, has Prager, or because I know you worked for Prager and then at Daily Wire, have they ever tried to censor you, or have they always like just allowed you to do whatever you wanted when you wanted?
No, I have never been censored. Any topic that I want to cover, I cover. There were two tricky moments, I would say, at the Daily Wire, and this makes sense because during the time of COVID, obviously I'm anti-vax, but they were striking YouTube accounts. Like, you could not say anything about being anti-vax. And they were super concerned. There was editorial concerns. They were like, you can't say this about talking about the vaccine. And I really, really, really fought about it because it was really important to me, and they let me keep the content. But it was a fight, you know what I mean? And it was an understandable fight. Like, they're worried about getting a strike on the account, and then you can't exist. So it was a total rational argument. And then obviously, like, it was really tricky at the Daily Wire. There was no censorship, but it was really tricky dealing with the Kanye situation. Obviously, a lot of people had different feelings about it, and all of the feelings weren't the same at the same time. But I'm actually really proud of how we came out of it. I think I have such a stronger relationship with Jeremy and Caleb because of that situation. So, because that was us having to really deal with global attention on something, and trials by fire. If you can survive them, you're always stronger for it.
I'm going to bring this up because it's in the conversation, and I'm not going to like censor myself, but I wasn't just trying to lean into this. But when I was listening to the Crowder Daily Wire kind of beef, like one thing that I noticed when you were talking about your contracts is I'm 100 for everybody who watches. And I don't know if you know, but I'm independent. I manage myself. I produce myself. If I get a strike on my Facebook or YouTube, I have to pay for it. So there's a decision going on in my head too. I could say whatever I want, but if I want to do an entire documentary against vaccines, I should probably put it on BitChute or Rumble. It would just make more sense. So the fact that you can do a doc behind the paywall, and he was like, well, this is a thing. What I felt like Crowder didn't understand it, because he's worked with corporations all the time. If he was like me and he was 100% independent, if that got docked, he's losing the money. You know what I'm saying? So if you make 80% or 50% of your money on YouTube and your YouTube channel goes down, if you're not working for Daily Wire or someone else, you have to take the hit. So I don't, like you were saying that they weren't cool with it. I understand that, where it's like, if you want to go super hard in the paint about this, you might lose this. So why don't you do it behind the paywall? And why don't you go even harder? It's even if you're independent, it's like, it's not any easier to do that. In fact, it's probably easier to do with Daily Wire and some lawyers behind you, to be honest, where like, when you have enough clout, you can kind of get, like, I saw Brett Cooper said she got her TikTok back, and she was really fair about it. She was like, I shouldn't have to have done this to get mine back. And I can't imagine the people who don't have these resources to push like that. But that's what you have to deal with as an indie creator. So I make decisions all the time about like how I should say things. And if I want to go like 100% on a topic that I know Facebook won't like, I'll just put it behind Rumble or BitChute.
And by the way, Crowder knows this. It's the entire reason why he says, I can't say this right now. This is why he has his Mug Club subscribers. It was that was, I think, probably what was the most inauthentic thing about the entire circumstance, is that when YouTube was hitting his account and he was afraid that something was going to happen to him, he said, this is the entire model behind why he created a paywall himself. And he says, if you want to hear us have this conversation, then you can go behind the paywall. And people didn't realize, I guess, that hypocrisy, or some people didn't realize that hypocrisy. But it was just a really weird situation to go through altogether. And I always implore people, if you really want to understand how odd that situation was for us, go back. Like, I had never known Crowder before. I had never been on his show. I never watched the show. His content isn't really like for me, I guess you would say. But go back to election night of last year, when he joined the Daily Wire host on Backstage Live, and go watch that on YouTube and just see how warm he was. He was everybody's best friend. He was so funny. It was the greatest night. Like, you should really take the time, if you're invested at all in what has gone on here, to watch him on our Backstage Live and see how great he was. And then recognize in your mind that during that time, he had already purchased Stop Big Con and was already plotting like our demise to take our subscribers. It was one of the nastiest things. I've seen a lot of nasty stuff in politics, like, you know what I'm saying? But I was genuinely shocked. I was like, I walked away from that backstage and I said, I never really knew Steven Crowder, but he's really funny. That was so fun. Now I see why you guys like love him and support him. That I actually said that when I walked away. He sent me a message on Instagram after, complimenting me and how nice I looked there. And at the same time, he was working on this Stop Big Con, and then fast forward a month or a month and a half, and he was releasing personal phone calls. It's just, it's really hard to grasp that to me. I could never do that. So it was just weird.
I got a lot of heat for my stance, but I'm used to it now because I just don't really care. But, I've actually, to be honest, I've criticized Shapiro and Daily Wire 100 times more than I ever did Crowder. I never really even talked about Crowder because I never had a problem, but I just didn't agree with even, how he was basically like showing parts of it and acting like it was so crazy, but not revealing like what that actually meant and how he could backlog it. So, people gave me heat for that, but I don't care. If what I'm saying is true, it's going to age well. And, that's
the truth. And that's what I've always said, is that if you commit yourself to just being honest and telling people, there have been times where I've said, I don't trust this person, and people have been like, and then like a couple of months happen and more information becomes available and people are like, oh, you were totally right about this individual. Everything that went out with the Steven Crowder thing was just not normal. It was abnormal. I went through contract negotiations with Daily Wire. So of course, I'm going to defend them based on my own experiences. Of course, I have seen a term sheet. I've seen a standard contract. They let me negotiate every single element of that. That is what adults do. You have lawyers negotiate, and you say, there's no way I'm doing that. And they say, well, we definitely want this. And you say, well, there's no way I'm doing that. Everybody's contract looks completely different. I mean, as one tidbit, which I don't think the Daily Wire mind if I said, but, for me, it was very important that I did not become an employee of a Daily Wire. I wanted to make sure that I maintained my, outside contracted, and that's something they had never done before. So I'm a non-employee of the Daily Wire, and I think I'm the only one, right? Brett Cooper is an employee of the Daily Wire. Michael Knowles has been an employee of the Daily Wire, and what works for everyone is different based on their lives. Like I'm the only one that's a mother to two small children, and so I didn't want to have to stay in the office after I shoot my show. I wanted that flexibility. I mean, they have been so beyond flexible, and when you go to negotiation initially they're like, no, we definitely want you to be in the office. And I say, this doesn't work for me because of this. They were so understanding. And so that's where a lot of my anger came from, is that I'm listening to someone lie to people and try to take their money based on something that I know to be a lie. And lies really do make me angry. And I probably have to work on that a little bit. But I was so angry when that situation first went down. It's like, I will be the first one to tell somebody if there's some really shady backed up things happening at the Daily Wire. That just was not that.
Yeah, and I mean, you have a lot of leverage, and he has a lot of leverage into a contract where I'm not going to say with who, but someone recently is trying to basically bring me onto their media company. The first term sheet was terrible. It was, I mean, I know I'm not as big as Crowder, so I'm not expecting his type of money, but even for what I've built, it wasn't good at all. But I joked on them with the phone. I said, I'm not recording this phone call. Don't worry. I won't take it hard feelings if the business negotiation doesn't go well. But I've basically negotiated, and my attitude about it has been like, I don't need this job, but I appreciate it. So I'm kind of setting a high bar. If it doesn't work out, it's all good. But so far, they've given me, without a lawyer, they've given me back 3 different things. Like the first one was bad, but that's them shooting for their, like, trying
of course, they're going to try to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Yeah.
It's not that crazy. Yeah. I want to ask, thank you for your time. I'll do a couple more. And if you have to run, just let me know. You have 10 more minutes?
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
Cool. I wanted to ask about where you've gotten, because, whether people like it or not, I feel like your trajectory has gone super, super quickly, and you've kind of transcended politics. Even though you talk about politics a lot, I've met people just in my personal life. I've met women who they know who you are, they love what you do, but then I'll talk to them about politics thinking they're conservative, and they're actually not, but they like you though, because they like what you say and they know that it's real, but they're not even Republican. They're not even conservative. Hip hop blogs will cover you. You've taken it to a level that's like huge and cultural. How do you think you did that? And do you see it that way?
I think just by being myself. I know that for some people, they get very angry. Like there are people that are like, Candace, you should only cover politics. You should only cover horrible things that make us sad all day. But I'm not that person. I'm interested in culture. I've always been interested in culture. You know what I'm saying? I just told you a personal story about why I was so impacted by this Kanye West tweet. I have always been to a person that is interested in, I think that's actually beneficial to politics. I really invest in what Andrew Breitbart said, which is that politics is downstream from culture. For whatever reason, conservatives just completely ceded culture to the left, and we still stick up our noses to it. We're like, who cares about Hollywood? I'll tell you who cares. Do you want to know what's coming down the pipeline while kids are suddenly thinking they can pick their gender? Look what's on the stage in Hollywood. I want to be able to critique that. If you don't want to listen to me critique that, you don't need to watch my show. There's every other person that's only going to rattle off every depressing point about politics. I am genuinely interested in politics, and I'm genuinely interested in culture. And so I think I sit at the intersection of that, which has brought me into different groups. Also, a lot that I've been giving to people, and this is why you're getting a lot of moms on the left that follow me, is my genuine interest. I'm super crunchy. What can I say? I love to cook. I'm gardening. Like this is, I am giving people actually who I am. I don't vax my kids. I talk about those reasons that I don't vax my kids. And it brought in, shockingly to me, I didn't even think about this, but that actually tends to be people, moms on the left, that are very into crunchy culture. And so it kind of brought them to my platform. And maybe they don't listen to the politics, but they're very super interested in what I have to say about why I don't vax my kids, et cetera, et cetera. So I think just by being myself, nobody is just one thing. And I think people that pretend to be just one thing are actually super inauthentic. Like I have tons of interests. Like I don't go home and just go, hey, let's just talk about politics. Like there's so many things. I'm super into fitness. I love working out. And so I think that comes across and it widens my audience. And I would like to think that another element of that is I have been super honest about everything. I am a person, I really struggle with lying. It's just been, I just would rather say it and have it be awkward and lose the fans than to say something that I don't mean, you know? So I think people stick around because I will stand up to the mob. Even when the mob is like, get the vaccine. And I'm like, no, I'm the only person, the only conservative saying it. Well, then eventually the truth catches up with the lie and passes the lie. And people are like, okay, well, Candace was kind of actually right about that.
I guess real quick, I'm gonna fit this in. Someone had brought to my attention today, because I actually called my friend who works with me and does merch stuff, and I said, hey, do you have any questions you'd want to ask? And he said, Sam Harris has been saying, like, don't listen to Candace Owens, listen to the experts. Like, what do you think about Sam Harris, the intellectual?
I was so happy with Sam Harris, the intellectual, because I tell people all the time how meaningless college degrees are and how these people assume that they are the experts because they went to Stanford, and that's him. He has this mindset that because he went to Stanford and he has a master's that we should just listen to him. And the truth is that you spend enough time in school, you completely lose your gut instinct. All you know how to do is interpret what you read and in a newspaper, to reinterpret what the New York Times said. And you view that to be a token of education. I read the New York Times every morning. Yeah, well, you're an idiot. All I have to do is put it in the New York Times for you to believe it. You're not critically thinking. So watching his fall has been miraculous. And he's had this sort of obsession with me because he so publicly lambasted me about the vaccines and saying that I was going to get people killed. And then time caught up and it turned out that his education was meaningless. What it took was a little bit of gut instinct and critical thinking to purposefully not think inside of the box. And I made the better decisions. And it's completely driving him crazy, and I love it. I absolutely love it. His meltdown has been amazing. He's now at the stage where he's like, nobody does not have a degree should be allowed to speak. Like he's basically arguing for a dictatorship at this point. So he's a true authoritarian, and he showed his real stripes.
I'm Sam Harris. My mommy made Golden Girls, so everyone has to listen to what a smarty pants I am. But, he's aged so poorly. I almost feel bad for him because it's like he's aged like liberalism. Like it's like seems like it's a good idea. And like even his takes, it's like there's like no one there. Like even like the Joe Rogans and the Petersons are like, what are you doing, bro? Like this is so bad.
And those were his best friends. They were the intellectual dark web, which is like something I would never call myself. So cringe. But yeah, if you have to call yourself an intellectual, you're probably not.
Right. Yeah, dude.
Which is something, by the way, that Thomas Sowell says. He writes extensively about that. So I am stealing that from Thomas Sowell, who is actually an intellectual. But yeah, they put so much on their degrees. and, just trying to argue from this state of authority. I'm authoritative too, because I graduated from this school and that school. And yeah, I don't buy it. I don't subscribe to it.
Doesn't age well. I want to ask you about celebrity beefs. I think I know part of it is like if people say stuff like no one cares, but when you say something, it turns into a big story. Like whether it's Cardi B, Kim Kardashian, I know beefing's good for marketing. It just is because it becomes a big thing. Do you do it because it's fun? Do you do it because you know it works and people care, or do you just do it and it becomes big just because now people are paying, like they have eyes on your opinion?
I think people just have eyes on my opinion. Everybody obviously engages with culture. I'm one of a million people commenting on something, right? And for some reason, when I comment on it, that they're so irate that they respond to the comment. It becomes this back forth. All of us comment on culture all the time, but when I do it, I really get under their skin. And I thought about that often. Why is it always when I say something, they suddenly want to respond, they want to say something? Why am I so under Hollywood skin? And I think I'm one of the first to be so openly disrespectful of Hollywood, in the same way that I'm so openly disrespectful of academia. I don't have respect for you because you can sing. That doesn't, it's good that you can sing, and I might enjoy your singing, but I am not required to have respect for your opinion about politics simply because you sing or simply because you dance. And for a very long time in America, it's been the opposite circumstance, where somehow because you sing or you dance, you're somehow become this authority and we should listen to you on other things. I'm not saying that there isn't a circumstance in which we should listen to somebody because they have some other thoughts, but I don't find these people to be the kings and queens that they fancy themselves. And I also am just a person that isn't going to take kindly to disrespect. And I think that catches them off guard. They are just so used to being like in their own palace. And then they have like someone who they view to be a peasant that's just like biting back, and it just really gets under their skin. Yeah, I don't know why I always get a response to what I'm saying, the same thing everybody else is saying. But I think it's good. I think it sets a trend for the people that follow me and the young kids that follow me to know that these people are not cool. Like, these people are not relevant. You don't need to be like Hollywood, be like yourself.
Do you enjoy it, or do you ever you comment on it, it gets so big, and then you're like, maybe I shouldn't have said that because I don't feel like dealing with the backlash? Like, do you enjoy it, or does it get to be like?
I love it. I love it. The more that we can chip away at Hollywood, the idols, the idolatry of Hollywood, there is absolutely no reason that you need to listen to a love and hip hop star preach to you about politics. Like, please let me give you the permission to tell her she's an idiot, because you can't. That's it. This is and it just takes away this mirage that the celebrities are like pissing gold. They're just not. You know what I'm saying? And I want to give people the permission to know you don't need to listen to this. This is garbage.
I had a journey myself. Like, I was 18, 19. I came into politics. I leaned more left when I was young. I bought into like everything that they said about climate change, and I've always been super transparent about that. You obviously, said you were left wing. You kind of bought into like the race stuff. People bring up your old website sometimes. People even talk about your husband. Like, there's so many theories about you now that you're so big, and people then they'll say, she works for Daily Wire, she's controlled. Out of all those things, I'm sure that you see and hear, although once again, it's a small percentage, more people don't say that and they appreciate what you do. Like, are there any you want to address, or are there any that like just annoy you where you're like, nah, that's not how it went?
I mean, I will address any of them. I have addressed all of them. Like, I'm very proud of everything that's happened to me. I'm proud of my awakening. I'm proud that I was on the left, and that I now do so much work with conservatives, because I speak from a place that I've been, you know what I'm saying? So I understand how it works. I understand how I got brainwashed into believing that I could be a liberal. Thank goodness Social Autopsy happened and threw me into the middle of Gamergate accidentally, because that was my awakening, that the left media lies when I just said something that was true, that, that girl was harassing herself. She called me up. The Gamergate girl literally called me up and threatened me because she thought I had created a technology that was going to expose trolls. And then I just tweeted, I don't know who that was, but she harassed herself. And suddenly the left started attacking me. And thank God, Mike Cernovich, this voice that I would have thought was an alt-right racist, whatever, reached out with this hand of kindness and invited me to an event. And I'm walking into this event like, this is crazy, conservatives are this. And he was so kind. So I have talked about every piece of my history openly. It's how I got to where I am. Sometimes you trip upward, and that has kind of been the story of Candace Owens. I have definitely stumbled, but I thank God for every single experience that I have. I wouldn't change even one thing. What I have, if I had known 2020 hindsight, could I have avoided some traps? Definitely. But like I said earlier, like those sort of things only make you stronger when you go through them. So I'm proud of my story, and I'll answer any questions about anything.
Outside of work in politics, who do you like the best, like as a person, outside of who they are and what they do?
My husband. I am very happily married, which helps, obviously. Obviously had a crazy story with how I met my husband, getting engaged after 2 weeks, but he really is my person. And it's why I'm always talking to people about just finding your person. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it does give you this shield. Like, no matter what people say about me, to me, on the internet, off the internet, I go home and I actually have a happy home. I have wonderful children, beautiful children. I've built a real life outside of politics, and that for me feels very indestructible. If there was another person outside of politics that I don't know. I'm just thinking of my husband right now.
Yeah,
So
that's a good answer.
I'll pick my husband.
I'm not trying to throw her under the bus, but I saw these clips of like Carrie Lake, and she was like, my husband's my second favorite person besides Donald Trump. Like, I don't know if she was joking or not, but she said that a few times. Would you ever say that even as a joke at like
I
a
would
Trump
never
event?
say that. No, I think that's disrespectful. Like, and I like Carrie Lake, so I'm not trying to trash her.
Right,
For
yeah.
me personally, like, I'm very big on I very much respect my husband, and I found him at just the right time, because it was really hard in politics, even on our side, like knowing who to trust. It's such a game of people trying to step on other people's heads. And then my husband is just such a solid rock of an individual, and he's so supportive. He has always believed in what I want to do, and that's hard. It's not easy to, be married to someone who's constantly in the middle of a firestorm and people want to kill you, and got FBI calling because there's death threats against, you know what I'm saying? Like,
For
it
sure.
takes a special kind of person to be able to stand through that. So I just have like the utmost respect for my husband and all the work that he does. Like, he's Catholic. The only time he ever speaks out is about his faith and those sorts of things. So yeah, I would not say that, but everybody's different. Maybe she was joking. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was a joke, but I was like, damn, that's kind of sus. Like, if I was the husband, I'd be like, wait, what? And she's like, no, I'm kidding. I'd still, I'd look like that meme of that, like, guy who looks like a snitch, like on his phone. I'd be like, what did you mean by that? I've seen people say, and I've met you. I've never met your husband. He seems like a nice guy. People theorize about him and like, oh, Candace sold out because she's with him. Like, I don't even really know much about it, but like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I have seen only some weird, like, there are the weirdest conspiracies on the internet. Like, I have a girlfriend who has the last name Schwab, but she has nothing to do with Klaus Schwab. And they'll be like, Candace Owens is related to World Economic Forum Klaus Schwab via her friend. Like, guys, this is literally crazy internet conspiracy theory. She does not know this man. She's literally born in like Michigan. But with my husband, I think a lot of the conspiracy theory stems from the fact that his dad sits in the House of Lords. And it's just so wild to me that people have turned that into a conspiracy theory. Like, the Queen decides on that, and it's usually based on business accomplishments. My husband's father is the greatest influence in his life. He is one of the greatest influences in my life now. This is a man who came from absolutely nothing. So when people try to bring in his wealth, I'm like, this is everything we talk about being the American dream, even though he's not American, is exactly this. He had nothing. He came from a one-parent household, and he worked for everything that he has. He didn't go to college. So this is why me and his dad, like, people always think, oh, his dad's like some rich guy. Me and his dad instantly hit it off because there's so many parallels in our story. And his dad had, one night before he was going to bed, he heard God speak to him. And at almost 40 years old, he became a devout Christian. He put his trading firm on hold to study the Bible for 2 years. This is a wonderful man. I am so blessed to have this person as a father-in-law. Everything that he does in the House of Lords is on family policy. And it is centered around God. Everything if you look into my father-in-law, it is all about faith, and it is all about family. And that is the work that he does day in and day out. So I guess this is kind of a weird thing of like just not liking him because he's successful, which I always find to be really hypocritical in conservative circles, where they start being like, well, this person has money. And then there's this thing that super annoys me where people say that because he has money, I married into my, like, I think people have this, like, if you don't understand wealth, they're like, well, you married George. So what happened? George and I got married and his dad said, like, welcome to the family, and handed me a $6 billion check. Like, no, we support our own lives. I have had my own money before. I have not taken any money from George's family. Like, this is our life that we are building. I'm sure, like, he'll be able to leave things for his son, and I will not be able to have that for my family because I don't have wealth. But we support our own lives. We've never taken anything. So it's just, honestly, I think it comes from a place of jealousy and stupidity, a combination of, like, not realizing how wealth works and not understanding, like, it's wonderful that his dad worked for everything that he has, and I love him as a father-in-law. I really do.
And I think I'm not going to get into your stuff, but Candace is doing well. I think you have a lot of value whenever it's time for you to re-sign or get another deal. I think you've built a massive amount of value, so it's not like you're a homeless person that's like desperate for a dollar.
I'm like, I worked my butt off, guys. I have money. Please don't say that, like, you think my father-in-law is taking care of everything. We bought everything ourselves, our money, George's saving, my savings, paid for my own wedding, like, because my parents couldn't give me any money. So yeah, I find it to be just like a little bit of, like, you're just kind of being a little bit, suspect.
As a man myself now too, who was struggling a lot more in my 20s, although, I understand why people would like certain stuff. When you are successful, it is attractive, I think, to a woman. And also when you're secure, because a woman doesn't want you to leave her on the side of the road. So it's not necessarily, I think, a bad thing to be able to take care of someone, because I think that's what all women want, one way or another, to be taken care of. They don't want someone that doesn't have their stuff together one way or another.
And that's biological, by the way. There are biological implications to our sociology, and hypergamy, which is women marrying up, is actually very natural. The opposite, it's not natural for men to marry up. There's a whole book on that by E.O. Wilson that talks about how biology is guiding our sociology. It talks extensively about that. But yeah, I'm not going to be ashamed of the fact that my husband's father worked his butt off. I'm working my butt off for everything that I have. And so I applaud him and all of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I people have said that to me, and it's like, you know what? I know how you are. I know that you don't care. So I was like, I'm gonna throw it her way, see what she says, because I know she'll be able to talk
ask
about
me
it.
anything.
Before my last question, I want to say too, for myself, I worked hard in my 20s. I struggled. I had no money. I currently work for myself. Even without, Blaze, Crowder, Daily Wire, whatever. I think if you work hard enough, if you work smart enough, if you are as good as you think you are, and you stay consistent with it, nobody's really going to block your shine. So regardless of what you think of me or Candace or any of these people, I hope I could at least inspire some people to show you that, and Candace as well. There are lanes for people. Like, there is no one there. I mean, they're going to censor, they're going to do certain stuff. But for me, I've said my piece. Honestly, I've criticized Daily Wire more than I've criticized Crowder before that whole situation. And I appreciate you for always talking to me and having me on, because,
you're allowed to.
Yeah.
Like, you're allowed to criticize. Like, you're going to criticize me. There's going to be something I do that you're going to be like, I love Candace. I've loved her in the past, but this is just such BS. Like,
yeah, this whole interview is that moment. This whole interview is trash. No, I'm joking. My last question, just kidding. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much. It was great talking. The last question is, what are you working on as far as your projects in your life, your career? And also, I know you're a mom now, so just about that.
Okay, I'm really glad you asked the question of what I have coming up. First off, I have 2 explosive documentaries coming out this year. I cannot tell you about one of them because it is going to break the internet when it is announced, and I need to let it break it naturally. The second one is I signed on to do a 10-part docuseries on Stephen Avery. For those of you that watched Making a Murderer back in 2015, Netflix did this whole series about this man that was wrongly convicted of attempted murder. And then they found the real person who had done it while he was in prison. And then he got convicted of murder the second time. And these documentary makers from Netflix sort of went down and made people think that he was innocent. And I'm telling you, looking back at what Netflix did, and like women that are marrying this man in prison, him and his nephew are in prison for this murder of this woman named Teresa Hallback. This was White Lives Matter, bro. Like, this was like Stephen Avery was there, Michael Brown, and being able to show that all of the stuff that Netflix left out to make them think that this man was innocent, I think was going to be crazy. It was like a cult following. And so we're taking on a 10-part docuseries to explore all the lies. So that's why I was in Wisconsin last week when you hit me up. The second documentary, it's going to break the internet when it's announced. I don't want to even give a hint for it, but I'm always working my butt off constantly. It's a lot managing everything, plus being a mom and as involved of a mother as I am. That's why even when we set this up, I was like, it's gotta be when the kids are napping, which they are right now. Everything is centered around my children and giving them the opportunities that, I never had in life. That's the truth. Nobody opened any doors for me. I started my channel on YouTube, created as my own content creator, editing my own videos. It's been a journey and it's been amazing, but nobody got me here but myself. I didn't marry into this. I did not marry George and get a Daily Wire contract. They came to me, because of the work that I had already put out there. So there's no substitutes for hard work, which is why I hope people learn from following me.
Yeah. And I mean, just from somebody that understands business, your value is super high even before Daily Wire. So, I don't know what that situation was like, but I'm sure you had offers and, like you had already built a lot before you got there. So you had a lot of leverage.
Yeah. And I'm grateful to be where I'm at. And there's tons of stuff coming. I love where I'm at. I love that I'm in between culture and politics. And I hope everybody's enjoying the stuff that we're putting out.
Thank you for being here. And by the way, guys, I just want to repeat this again. I have friends that have now gone into Congress. There's people who follow me. There's people who I've met at events who say, hey, hit me up and, I'll come on the show. I think everybody's afraid of me. I think they think I'm going to ask some tough questions, which I probably will. I think they know that Candace came on, didn't ask for me not to say anything, doesn't care. And honestly, there's a lot of people that don't want to come on my show. They're afraid of me. So thank you, Candace, for coming on, and thanks for being
I'll always come on. Just to remind everybody, my first video that went viral, it was because you put it up it was Mom, Dad, I'm a Conservative. And there was another one that you put up on your channel on Facebook. So I've had a connection with you, just like Mike Cernovich. I mean, people that really supported me from the very beginning. And before I even had a Facebook page or anything, you guys were lifting my content and putting it where people could see it. And when my videos went viral, it's because of content creators like you. So I never forget that stuff. And I'm still deeply appreciative of that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was the Charlottesville one that went crazy because I didn't know who you were.
Yeah.
I think I saw it on Reddit or something back before Reddit sucked and they got rid of all the good stuff on there. And, now they shut the Trump page down and stuff. And I was like, I just knew it was good. If in another life, if I could do something else, I would be like a talent manager at A&R because I didn't know who you were. But I'm like, this is a smash hit. Like, what the hell? And from that point on, I appreciate the credit. But I think you would have figured out one way or another because, a lot of people come and go. And you took the energy and all that and just took it to another level because, super witty, super quick on your feet. And just like that video, I was just like, that's huge. And I think it got like 30 million views or something. That's crazy.
It was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for coming on. And everybody, this has been Dream Rare Podcast. Check it out. And intro videos coming. Thanks again. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, Stay Blessed long sleeve, God is Great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made in the United States. Handpicked by me. Patreon.com/raretalk for $5 a month. You can help support me. Support the show. If you haven't noticed, unlike other channels, I don't work with very many sponsors, sometimes none at all. And part of the way I'm able to do that is with the dreamrare.com shop and patreon.com/raretalk. So thank you guys for keeping this show free, unimpeded, uninterrupted. I'm forever grateful. My free email list is stayintouchwithme.com. So check the links below in the description or just type in on any browser, stayintouchwithme.com, all one word. You'll find my email list, put it in there, and it's the least annoying email list you'll ever be on. I barely use it because I don't like getting emailed every day or every week. It's annoying. So I don't do it. Stayintouchwithme.com. It helps me take back some power away from big tech. Telegram, t.me/dreamrarechat or @dreamrarechat. Due to censorship, I post all my live stream and videos there. Sometimes I have some bonus content, and I try to give people a heads up when Facebook or YouTube won't. DreamRareChat at Telegram. My Instagram is @DreamRare. Thanks for everybody following there for shorter content. And DreamRareLinks.com. That's DreamRareLinks.com. Has all my stuff. My podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, my music on Spotify and Apple, my Rumble page, my BitChute and Gab page. All my links are found at DreamRareLinks.com. Thanks for watching, folks. God bless you. You already know I'll be back with more content soon. Appreciate you.